You say that all whites are racist. Can you expound on that, please?
Any white person who was born, raised, and schooled in the United States of America, if you aren't a racist, you're a miracle. Either that or you decided to educate yourself. Because education in this country is about white is right, brown's all right, black's got to stand back. Yellow's mellow, but whites, we educate in a way that says that white males have done all the adventures, have made all the adventures, have done all the discovering, have made all, everything that is good and has been accomplished according to social studies, which is actually anti-social studies, by white males. It's a lie. But we do that in order to maintain the myth of white superiority. The myth of race has to be maintained at all costs in this country. Because if white people have to give up the color of their skin as being something that makes them perfect, what do they have left? If we start teaching the truth about history, if we start teaching about Nile Valley contributions to civilization, it will totally change the way we conduct ourselves in the classroom. White people created racism. Anything you create, you can destroy. God created human beings, the human race, and they started out black women. White people created racism. Human beings created racism. It's time to get over it.
So, if all white people are racist, according to you, can they be reprogrammed?
Of course they can. Of course they can. Of course they can be. It's called education. I'm an educator. The word educator comes from the root duc dus, which means lead, the prefix e, which means out, the suffix ate, which means the act of, and the suffix or, which means one who does. An educator is one who is engaged in the act of leading people out of ignorance. Now, I know you can change them. The second year I did the blue-eyed, brown-eyed exercise in my classroom, it was filmed by the Canadian Broadcasting Corporation. They gave me a copy of that film. I showed it to my father. My father was about 59 years old at the time. He's been a farmer all his life. He raised six kids, lost one, raised six. Watched that film as a 59-year-old man. When it was over, he stood up, and with tears in his eyes, he took his red handkerchief out of the back pocket of his overalls, his bib overalls, and said, "I wish somebody had taught me that when I was 9 years old." Nobody had dare say to me, "This doesn't work. This is too harsh. This isn't necessary. You can't teach an old dog new tricks," because they're wrong. You can teach an old dog new tricks. You can teach people to give up the myth of racism. Somebody taught the Greeks to give up the myth that the sun was a god in a golden chariot that went across the sky every morning. They believed that for hundreds of years. We have believed the myth of 3 or 4 races, different races in this country, for long enough. 572 years or something like that is enough of that. It was a lie to begin with, and it's a lie. Oh yeah, in 30 years, white people will have found out that they have no choice but to get along with those who are different from themselves. I'm not willing. I'd love to wait, but I can't. At my age, I'm not going to be here in 30 years. But we could change this situation if we chose to. You want to talk about forgiveness? You want to talk about changing this thing? I cannot understand how Japanese people can stand the sight of any of us, and yet they do. I cannot understand why black people who have been subjected to the ugliness that they've been subjected to in this country can get up every morning and go to work among us and not be absolutely furious. And I don't understand why we allow white people to behave the way they do. I don't understand that. We have got to stop tolerating the intolerable. If it's intolerable for my black cousins, and every black person on this earth is one of my cousins, if it's intolerable for them, it's intolerable for me. I will not tolerate it. I will not tolerate it. That is not that. I am required not to tolerate that kind of treatment for the people who are related to me. And that's every person on the face of the earth. If your ignorance is such that you'll mistreat somebody because of your ignorance about the color of their skin, don't do it around me. Number one, I've been threatened with death lots of times. Now I say, go for it, fool. My husband died 4 years ago. Being with him would not be a bad thing for me. Death is not the worst thing that can happen to you. Living a worthless, useless life is much worse than dying.
People who don't know you, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, I'm a third grade teacher in a country school in Riceville, Iowa, and I am here at the NAACP speaking because the day after Martin Luther King Jr. was killed by a society that hated him because he was going to change the economic situation in this country, I did an exercise in discrimination with my third grade classroom to let my little third graders, all white, all Christian children, find out how it feels to be something other than white in the United States of America. I split them according to the color of their eyes and treated those who had the wrong color eyes for the day the way we have traditionally treated blacks, Native Americans, Asians, all those Jews, all those who are different in appearance or in religion. And we learned more that day than I wanted to know.
What did that study show you?
Oh, it showed me a lot of things. Number one, it showed me that racism is a learned response. Nobody's born a bigot. You have to teach bigotry, and that's what we do in this country. I found out how it feels to be on the receiving end of racism because I'm blue-eyed, and the brown-eyed children were on the top in that first day. And I found out how it feels to be treated badly by people over whom you have power because of having the wrong color eyes. I found out how it feels to be subjected to unbelievable and unreal discrimination because of a physical characteristic over which I had no control. I thought I knew about racism. I thought I knew about child psychology. I knew nothing. All I knew was what I had learned in school. And what I had learned in school was not education. What I got in school wasn't education. It was indoctrination. I was taught how to be a good American citizen. And in this country, we think that the only Americans are the ones who live in the contiguous 48 states of the United States. Americans are everybody from the very north tip of Canada to the very southern tip of South America. But we, in our arrogance, say that we are the only Americans. If you're really going to keep this America to Americans, we don't dare build a wall on the southern border of the United States, because those people, those brown-skinned people that are going to come across that border are Americans. Now we'd better choose our language or choose our behaviors. Let me tell you something. It wasn't a study and it wasn't an experiment. I don't experiment with children without their knowledge or their permission. It was experiential education. It was giving a child an experience for the purpose of changing their brain. And that's exactly what it does every time I do it.
Now, you conducted the same study, not study. Exercise with adults.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
And is it any different between the children and the adults?
Adults get more violent. I've been hit several times by white males, angry white males. I've had a knife pulled on me. They ran me out of Uniontown, Pennsylvania at midnight one night. 3 carloads of blacks did, to get me out of town because the teachers that I put through the exercise in a very limited way were so angry that they called the superintendent in the afternoon and said, if you don't get that bitch out of town, we're going to kill her. So they got me out of town. First time I've been scared. And the last time I've been scared. Because I found out that day that they could kill me, but they couldn't kill the idea. Victor Hugo said, no force on earth can stop an idea whose time has come. The idea of one race, the human race, is an idea whose time has come. We are not going to be able to stop it no matter what they do. They can elect Trump after Trump after Trump, and that will not stop the idea that there's only one race on the face of the earth. It's the human race, and we are all members of it. You and I are cousins. Now, if you don't like being my cousin, that's too bad for you. But we are all in the same family. We are members of the family of man.
You say that all whites are racist. Can you expound on that, please?
Any white person who was born, raised, and schooled in the United States of America, if you aren't a racist, you're a miracle. Either that or you decided to educate yourself. Because education in this country is about white is right, brown's all right, black's got to stand back. Yellow's mellow, but whites, we educate in a way that says that white males have done all the adventures, have made all the adventures, have done all the discovering, have made everything that is good and has been accomplished according to social studies, which is actually anti-social studies, by white males. It's a lie. But we do that in order to maintain the myth of white superiority. The myth of race has to be maintained at all costs in this country. Because if white people have to give up the color of their skin as being something that makes them perfect, what do they have left? If we start teaching the truth about history, if we start teaching about Nile Valley contributions to civilization, it will totally change the way we conduct ourselves in the classroom. It will have to. Columbus didn't discover America. You can't discover a place where people are already living, but we celebrate that every October. It's a lie. We need to get over. We need to stop telling the myths and start telling the truth.
So when you tell people that they're racist, and it must have some kind of effect, because most people will say, I'm not racist.
I'm not a racist. Why, some of my best friends are black.
Right.
Yeah, and then you say, name one. Or this one, I don't see color. And when some woman says to me, I don't see color, I say, I knew that. If you saw color, you wouldn't dye your hair that way. Or I say, if you saw color, you wouldn't wear that shirt with those pants. I believe that you don't see color. It's an attempt to deny skin color. And it's an attempt to deny what's wrong with seeing the color of my skin. Is it all right for you to see me kind of pink? That's okay for me. I don't mind. And I suspect that you don't mind being seen the color you are. You have a right to be what you are. And until people in this country and people in this world get it into their heads that the first modern human beings that evolved on this earth were black women. They evolved in sub-Saharan Africa about 280,000 years ago, and every human being on the face of the earth today has the memory of those black women's genetic structure in their genes. Now, we don't want to admit that, but that's the way it is. And as people moved farther and farther from the equator, their bodies produced less and less melanin, so their hair, their skin, and their eyes got lighter. As they moved into the east, they ate a lot of fish and a lot of vegetables, so their skin took on a different tone. I found that out when I was raising little kids. My husband worked in a supermarket. He was the head of the produce department, and they had lots of oranges that they couldn't sell, so he'd bring them home, and I was feeding my kids orange juice like you never saw in your life. They began to have an orange cast to their skin. I thought they had a liver problem. So I took him to the doctor, and she said, what are you feeding these kids? I said, well, lots of orange juice. She said, stop it if you want them to stop being orange. Now, if you think that skin color isn't anything other than the body's natural reaction to the natural environment, get over it.
So if all white people are racist, according to you, can they be reprogrammed?
Well, of course they can. Of course they can. Of course they can be. It's called education. I'm an educator. The word educator comes from the root duc dus, which means lead, the prefix e, which means out, the suffix ate, which means the act of, and the suffix or, which means one who does. An educator is one who is engaged in the act of leading people out of ignorance. Now, I know you can change them. The second year I did the blue-eyed, brown-eyed exercise in my classroom, it was filmed by the Canadian Broadcasting Corporation. They gave me a copy of that film. I showed it to my father. My father was about 59 years old at the time. He's been a farmer all his life. He raised six kids, lost one, raised six. Watch that film as a 59-year-old man. When it was over, he stood up, and with tears in his eyes, he took his red handkerchief out of the back pocket of his overalls, his bib overalls, and said, I wish somebody had taught me that when I was 9 years old. Nobody had dare say to me, this doesn't work, this is too harsh, this isn't necessary, you can't teach an old dog new tricks, because they're wrong. You can teach an old dog new tricks. You can teach people to give up the myth of racism. Somebody taught the Greeks to give up the myth that the sun was a god in a golden chariot that went across the sky every morning. They believed that for hundreds of years. We have believed the myth of 3 or 4 races, different races in this country, for long enough. 572 years or something like that is enough of that. It was a lie to begin with, and it's a lie.
Now, we often hear about reverse racism now.
There's no such thing as reverse racism. There's no such thing as reverse racism. You can only be a racist if you have the power to institutionalize what you're doing to people who are different from you. What we're calling reverse racism is natural reaction to being treated unfairly on the basis of somebody else's ignorance. Now, don't ever let anybody say to you or about anyone around you that people don't like that person because of the color of their skin. That isn't the reason white people don't like people of color. They don't like people of color because they don't understand about skin color. And they don't understand that we all are descendants of somebody who looked like your mother.
That's deep.
You don't really want to get me started on this because
I do want to get you started.
I'm really angry about how we are miseducating the American mind.
And what I like the most about what you're doing in your exercises is that you come in with a very direct attitude. You even call yourself the B word.
Well, but you see, the B word for me is the one that's most often used to refer to me. It used to bother me a lot. For me, the B word is an acronym for being in total control, honey. So you want to call me that? That'll prove to me that you're out of control. And then I'll whip out my little Lorena Bobbitt fruit knife and take care of it for you. Go on.
So is it necessary to strip away all of a white person's power, like in your exercises, in order for them to see the light? Or is there another way
It's necessary to do what we do in offices and in the military and in schools and colleges and in hospitals and in community groups all the time. What we do is we become our parent ego. We go into our parent ego state, and that forces all those we're working with into their child ego state. And if you watch our present so-called president, he spends most of his time either in his child or his parent ego state. He never gets into his adult ego state unless he's reading off the teleprompter. And he is such a poor reader that oftentimes he makes mistakes, and then he is instantly in his child ego state right in front of your very eyes. It's absolutely fascinating to watch it happen.
Speaking of our president, a lot of people say that racism has risen under him.
Anybody who doesn't say that hasn't been paying attention. It absolutely has. I'm getting more hate mail now than I have gotten for years. The kinds of things that are being said in this country today are things that he has said for the last 2 years. He has said them publicly, and he got elected because he said them publicly. We have a group of people in the United States of America who were in response to 8 years of a black man in the White House and the possibility that they might have from 4 to 8 years of a woman in the White House, will elect anything that walks and can chew gum at the same time. This last election, as far as I'm concerned, was a direct response to having a black man in the White House for 8 years. And it's time to change the White House to the President's house. This is ridiculous to call the place where the President of the United States lives the White House. It sends the wrong message. It says, I remember when Richard Nixon said to a group of reporters, "I'm trying to save the White House for you white people." That says it all. And at that moment I thought, well, wait a minute. Now this is something that has to be changed, and it has to be changed. Nothing can stop an idea whose time has come. It's time to change the name of the White House to the President's house or the President's residence, which has a nice ring to it, don't you think?
With the state of the country being what it is right now, there's a lot of conversations taking place about, let's have a conversation about race. How would a person go about having that conversation? What can they expect to happen in a conversation?
Well, the first thing they have to do is not talk about tolerance. I found out the day I was on the bottom in the blue-eyed, brown-eyed exercise with my students. I found out how it feels to be tolerated. I found out that tolerance means put up with or allow me to be. I don't need your allowance, and I don't need to be tolerated. I want to be valued, recognized, and appreciated. Put your tolerance where the sun doesn't shine. I do not believe in tolerance because in this country, we tolerate zits when we're little, zits when we're teenagers, hot flashes when we're old, and the flu and bad weather in between. We tolerate ugly things that are going to go away. I don't intend to tolerate anyone. I intend to recognize, appreciate, and value people, not to tolerate them. And I have all kinds of respect for the man who is part of the tolerance group in Atlanta, maybe. I have all kinds of respect for those folks, but we've got to change it from tolerance because the powerful can tolerate. The powerless have to wait to be tolerated. I have no time for that.
I like that.
No, I'm going to get lots of angry responses to that one. And I understand that. But I'm reading a book right now. Everybody needs to read this book. It's called, everybody has to read this. Everybody that's watching this has to read this book on tyranny. 20 things that we've learned over the last 100 years in this country that have put us in the position we're in now and what we can do about it. Everybody has to read this book. They should read this book first, and then they should read The Myth of Race by Robert Wald Sussman. And once you've read The Myth of Race, you will never, ever again go along with the idea that there are 3 or 4 or 5 different races. It was a lie made up by the people who ran the Spanish Inquisition. And before that, there were different colors, but race had nothing to do. There was only one race, the human race. We made that whole thing up. It's time to get rid of it. We have the power to do that. This country got ready for World War II in about 6 months. And you're telling me that we can't destroy racism? White people created racism. Anything you create, you can destroy. God created human beings, the human race, and they started out black women. White people created racism. Human beings created racism. It's time to get over it.
Can we go back 1 second?
Sure you can.
You criticized President Trump.
Did I?
One thing that a lot of people have criticized former President Obama on was not speaking out on race enough. Do you think he failed in that?
What if he had spoken out enough on race? Imagine what would have happened to him. The man is still alive. Do you remember Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.? Do you remember Malcolm X? Do you remember all those people have been killed not because of the color of their skin, but because of the fear of white people that someone who isn't white is going to look better, sound better, act better, do better than they do? Mr. Obama was the president of all of us. He wasn't just the president of black people. He was the president of all of us. The man who's there now is and claims to be the president of the people who look like him. When he says, make America great again, what he's really saying is, make America hate again.
Human rights activist Jane Elliott. Today, most urban sectors, especially Milwaukee, remains hyper-segregated. Why is it taking so long, or why doesn't it seem like we can move the button on diversity in neighborhoods?
Because the people who have the power in this country are the people who have the money. And the people who have the money are going to decide where people live. You need to realize that there are more children attending segregated schools in the United States today than there were previous to Brown versus Board of Education. And that's a fact. You need to realize that it is not the intent of white people to let this situation change in favor of anyone but themselves. And right now, white people are really frightened. If you don't understand the destruction of Planned Parenthood offices, and you don't understand the wall that we're going to build on the southern border of the United States, you haven't read the book, The Birth Dearth by Ben Wattenberg. Ben Wattenberg was a brilliant Jewish man who was a member of the American Enterprise Institute. And he wrote a book, the first paragraph of which says, the main problem confronting the United States today is there aren't enough white babies being born in this country. He was an advisor to presidents of the United States. He wrote the book in 1987. He says if we don't change this and change it rapidly, white people will lose their numerical majority in this country and this will no longer be a white man's land. Now, I'm not misrepresenting this. I'm telling you exactly, almost exactly what he says. He says there are 3 things we can do to solve this. Number 1, we could pay women to have babies, as they have been doing in Western European nations for years. Then he says, and these are his words, not mine, unfortunately, we would have to pay women of all colors to have babies, so we don't want to do that. He says the second thing we could do is increase the number of legal immigrants that are allowed into this country every year. Then once again he says, unfortunately, the vast majority of those wanting to come to this country today are people of color, so we don't want to do that. The third thing he says, and white women had better pay attention to this, 60% of the fetuses that are aborted every year are white. If we could keep that 60% alive, that would solve our birth dearth. Does that sound like racism to you? And if it doesn't, I want to know why it doesn't. If it doesn't, you don't understand what racism is. And I think it does. When we close Planned Parenthood clinics because we think they're there only for abortion, we need to take another look. They are used for many, many, many things, and many women need the things that they can get from Planned Parenthood clinics. But we are willing to do away with all that good to avoid allowing white women to have control of their own bodies. Now, nobody had better tell one of my daughters or granddaughters what they can do with their body. You haven't that right. Now, it would be interesting if we were as concerned about sperm cells, wouldn't it? I mean, we could take a whole lot of fun out of you boys' lives.
Right. A lot of people don't understand the trauma associated with race and racism. Can you talk a little bit about the trauma associated with?
The trauma associated with it,
Yeah.
one of the main traumas is it tells white people that they are superior because of the lack of melanin in their skin. And then they find out suddenly that we've got a black president. That's traumatic. That's where their trauma is. Living a lie, finding out the truth is traumatic. Finding out now, recently, that within 30 years, white people will be in the numerical minority in this country is going to be traumatic. And that's the reason we have to solve this problem, and we have to solve it now. I will ask folks tonight, how many of you black folks want to get even with all white people? And that's what white people are quite certain blacks are going to want to do, is get even with all white people. And nobody will raise their hand. And then I'll say, how many of you want to get even with one or two? Every hand will go up, and you know why, and so do I. White people are scared to death right now, particularly white males. They're scared to death that they are going to lose their power in the future. And they are. But if you want to get ready for the future, if you want to be treated well in the future, treat others well in the present. What we do in the present constructs the future. What we have done in the past, we can learn from that. And we'd better learn from that. Those who forget the mistakes of the past are doomed to repeat them. And when you read this book, you'll realize that that's exactly what we're doing. We're repeating the mistakes that we have made in the past because we aren't teaching about these mistakes in the present. We are not teaching history that is true. We aren't teaching social studies that is true. We aren't even teaching true geography, for God's sake. Have you seen the Mercator map recently? Have you seen that great big Greenland hanging down in the middle of that map like a ripe plum? And have you seen the legend at the bottom that says South America is actually 9 times larger than Greenland? Were you aware of that? Most of those watching this program are not aware of that. What's your question?
The question on the wall is, there's, when you talk to people about the wall, certain people about the wall, there's certain people for it, certain people against it. The people who are for it, what's their mindset?
They're scared. They're afraid those immigrants are going to come over here and take their jobs. Let me tell you something. You can build a wall 50 feet tall, and smart Hispanics, Latinos, smart Ecuadorians, smart others are going to tunnel under that wall and come up in their friend's house on the other side. You can build walls until hell freezes over. You will not keep that immigration from happening, and you'd better hope we don't keep that immigration from happening. We need those people. Do you know what will happen to the economy of this country if we take all the people who are brown-skinned immigrants out of this country, if we send them back? Do you know what will happen to our economy? Do you know what will happen to farming in California? Do you know what will happen to the price of your fruit? Do you know how hard it will be to get a good avocado? Do you have any idea what will happen to this country's economy if all those brown-skinned people go back to Mexico? I don't think we do. I don't think people have thought about that because they are being taught not to think. They are using a language. Right now, we are using a language that includes words like extremism and ugly language about people who are different from ourselves. People are listening to those words. They aren't listening to the philosophy behind them. They aren't listening to the core principles which this person has none of.
Now, just a couple more questions. When we hear, when I hear people say that they're not racist and things like that, and we talk about building racial harmony in this country, I don't think I'll see it in my lifetime. Can you predict in the near future or far future when we will ever have racial harmony?
Oh
in this
yeah,
country?
in 30 years, white people will have found out that they have no choice but to get along with those who are different from themselves. I'm not willing. I'd love to wait, but I can't. At my age, I'm not going to be here in 30 years. But we could change this situation if we chose to. During the Second World War, we called the Japanese, and you'll pardon me, but this is what we called them: slant-eyed little yellow. We didn't say that about the Germans. After the war, we rebuilt Germany and Japan, and we get along beautifully with the Japanese. That was in 1945 that we finally won that war. How many years ago was that? Figure that out quickly.
I'm not a math person, but
you're not a math person, but you know it wasn't that far.
Right.
And it didn't take 50 years for us to have peace with the Japanese and the Germans, even though we dropped 2 atomic bombs on Japan. The Japanese hadn't killed 10 million people. Nowhere near that. We didn't drop any bombs on Germany, any atomic bombs on Germany. They were a different kind of people. We couldn't afford to do that. We killed how many Japanese people with 2 atomic bombs? And they forgave us. You want to talk about forgiveness? You want to talk about changing this thing? I cannot understand how Japanese people can stand the sight of any of us, and yet they do. I cannot understand why black people who have been subjected to the ugliness that they've been subjected to in this country can get up every morning and go to work among us and not be absolutely furious. And I don't understand why we allow white people to behave the way they do. I don't understand that. And my 3rd graders, after they'd gone through the exercise, couldn't understand it and wouldn't tolerate it. And when they went up to junior high, and a junior high teacher used the N-word, one of my former students said, "If you're going to use that word, I'm going to go out in the hall until you stop using it, because we don't use that word in this school." That was a 7th grader who told his teacher off. When we have enough students who are willing to confront people who are making racist, sexist, ageist, homophobic statements, we're going to be better off. We have got to stop tolerating the intolerable. If it's intolerable for my black cousins, and every black person on this earth is one of my cousins, if it's intolerable for them, it's intolerable for me. I will not tolerate it. I will not tolerate it. That is not that. I am required not to tolerate that kind of treatment for the people who are related to me. And that's every person on the face of the earth. If your ignorance is such that you'll mistreat somebody because of your ignorance about the color of their skin, don't do it around me. Number 1, I've been threatened with death lots of times. Now I say, go for it, fool. My husband died 4 years ago. Being with him would not be a bad thing for me. Death is not the worst thing that can happen to you. Living a worthless, useless life.
I want you folks to do something. I want every white person, every person in this room who considers himself or herself a member of the white race to stand. Right now. Right now. Every person in this room who considers himself or herself a member of the white race. Now, remain standing. Now, remain standing. Now, will every person in this room who considers himself or herself a member of the black race please stand? Up, 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 up. And remain standing. Now, the brown race. Anybody who considers himself or herself a member of the brown race. Now, the yellow race. Now, the red race. Now, look around you, people. Practically everybody's standing. Now, will every person in this room who considers himself or herself a member of the human race please sit down? Now, people, that's the way it is. Every one of you, if you trace your DNA back far enough, you're going to find that some of your DNA came from Africa, because we all have the same ancestor back there, every single one of us. And those of you who think you don't have are obviously from outer space. Now, that means that every one of us is a 30th to 50th cousin to every other person in this room. So I want you to turn to the person on your left or your right or behind or in front of you, stick out your hand and say, "Hi, cousin."
Hi, cousin.
Now, now, will every person in this room who considers himself or herself a biracial person stand? Don't you stand. Don't you stand. People, we have to get rid of the language of racism. Words are important, people. Words matter. You have to be careful how you use them, and you have to refuse to tolerate these ugly words being used in your presence. Now, make no mistake about this. I've been described as a teacher. I'm not a teacher. Teachers dispense facts and figures so that they can get their kids ready for the end of school testing. I've been called a trainer. You train dogs and horses and members of the military. I don't train people. I'm an educator. The word educator, I don't want to be interrupted anymore. People, the word educator comes from the root duc dus, which means lead, the prefix e, which means out, the suffix ate, which means the act of, and the suffix or, which means one who does. An educator is one who is engaged in the act of leading people out of ignorance. Now, in this country, we spend a lot of money on what we call education. It isn't education, it's indoctrination. It takes us 13 years to teach a student, to educate a student, to be ignorant about race, and to support ideas that make this a better country. This is a word for this in my vernacular, since I was raised on a farm, is bullshit. Don't write that down. People, I recognize it when I see it, and that's what we're living with right now. If we were in post-racial society, Donosaurus T. Rump would not be in the White House. He got elected because white people resented having a black man in the White House for 8 years. It's time to face the truth and say the truth, and it's time for women, and all people of color to stop playing defense and defending what they are and go on the offense. We were here first. We don't have to apologize for what we are or for what we do. Now, I know some of you are thinking, boy, is she a bitch? Yes, I am. Now, how many of you women have been called the B word? Look around, fellas. Everybody's heard it. Come up with a new word. Now, how many of you are called that by a male? All right, people, for me, the B word is an acronym for being in total control, honey. And when women are seen in control, the men around them call her the B word. You need to say, "You're right, darling, I am." And then you need to whip out your little Lorena Bobbitt fruit knife. Now, don't do that, because some of these boys are scared to death. Now some of you are thinking, she doesn't like men. Oh, God, do I like men. Oh, Find me one, please, please. Some of my best friends are men. I was married to one for 59 years. When I married him, he looked just like Marlon Brando. He really did. When he died, he looked like Telly Savalas. Lived with me for 59 years. Now, what's your next question? Sorry.
Okay.
Education should be fun.
I'm already cutting out questions. Okay. Let's talk about privilege.
Angela, you want to talk about privilege?
And this goes to you, Jane, first. How did you first become aware? This is a reflective question. How did you first become aware of your own privilege? And how did you first become aware that others had more privilege than you? And I'm going to ask the same of you also.
Oh,
so,
you want me to go first?
So you go first.
I never thought of it as white privilege. I just thought if you do the right thing, people will do the right thing where you're concerned. And because I'm white, they did. And they were wrong. Because I've been doing the wrong thing for about 33 years, I did the wrong thing. I thought I was all right. And then I did the blue-eyed, brown-eyed exercise. And I watched a brilliant little blue-eyed white girl turn into a frightened, intimidated, unable to learn child in the space of 15 minutes because I accused her of not being smart enough because she had the wrong color eyes. And I watched 4 dyslexic brown-eyed boys read words they had never been able to read and spell words they had never been able to spell because nobody had ever told them that they could learn to read or spell. But on the day they had brown eyes, it was obvious that the world was theirs. They could do anything. I found out about expectations that day, and I realized that what we have done, what we white folks have done in this country, ever since we got here, is treat people positively or negatively, not on the basis of the color of their skin, but on the basis of our ignorance about skin color, where it comes from and what it causes. This is not about skin color, this is about ignorance. And the answer to ignorance is education. It is not indoctrination, it is not schooling, it is not training, it is education. But you have to have teachers who know better if they're going to teach better. And teachers can only teach what they know. And unfortunately for all of us, we've all been led down the same ugly path of thinking that it's all right to claim privilege when what we should be claiming is ignorance. We've got the wrong word here, people. This problem is white ignorance. And white people are running the show. Now you're going to think she's a traitor to her race. I'm not a traitor to the human race, and that's the only race I see. Make no mistake about that. And as long as we keep on acting as though there are several races, we can have panels like this at which we discuss white privilege instead of discussing white ignorance and deciding to do something about it. We need to start really furnishing education in these schools instead of furnishing indoctrination. Did that answer your question?
Yes, partially.
All right.
The rest of the question is, so how did you become aware of your own privilege or of others having more privilege than you? You're talking about...
I watched my students.
It was watching the students.
And I realized, watching them, that they were exhibiting the behaviors that they were copying from me. They acted hey, my little brown-eyed students, the day they were on the top in that exercise, became me. And it made me sick to my stomach, and it does to this day. I hate to remember that day, because I watched my brown-eyed children we just loved one another in my classroom. We really did. And on that day, I found out that I don't want to be tolerated. Because in that classroom, my kids tolerated me because I'm blue-eyed. The first thing that was said after I told the kids that blue-eyed people aren't as smart as brown-eyed people, a little brown-eyed child in the front row, Debbie Hughes, looked up at me and said, "How come you're the teacher here if you got them blue eyes?" I got a real experience that day, and a real educational experience, people. I found out how I look to people of color. And I have spent the last 50 years trying not to look like that and trying to encourage others to stop it. Tell you another thing. Do I have a few more minutes here? My father, at the age of 60, watched the film that the CBC made in my classroom the second year I did the exercise. They sent me a copy of it, and I showed it to my father and my mother. My father was 60 years old, the most honest man, the most moral man I've ever known. I showed him that film. When it was over, he stood up, and in his bib overalls and his blue chambray shirt rolled up to the elbows, he reached in his back pocket, took out his red handkerchief, and with tears in his eyes, he blew his nose and said, "I wish somebody had taught me that when I was 9 years old." You can criticize what I do until the cows come home. And psychologists do until they get smart. I don't listen anymore because my father said, "I wish somebody had taught me that when I was 9 years old." If somebody had taught my father that when he was 9 years old, we would never have had to listen to some of the ridiculous racist remarks that he made. And he never made them again after he watched that film. Don't tell me that you can't change people. Don't tell me that you're too old to change. There isn't a person in this room who is too old to change. White folks, you got to change, because within 30 years, you will be a numerical minority in the United States of America. And you had better pray to whoever you pray for, that people of color are not going to get even with us and treat us the way we have treated them. If you can't think of any other reason for treating people like equal human beings, think of that one. Because what you do today is creating the future. I don't think you want the kind of future that you have provided for people in the present. I may be mistaken. You may not know what's going on. You know what's going on. And if I asked you, every white person in this room who wants to be treated the way we have treated people of color in this country, if you'd like to be treated that way, all you white folks, if you want that for the rest of your life, please stand.
Hi guys, welcome back once again to my YouTube channel. I'm Big Boy. Remember, if it was for the first time you come across my video, don't forget to like this video, subscribe and share. Thank you so much for your time. May God bless you whenever you are. Okay guys, in today's clip is all about Dr. Elliot. We all know Jane Elliot, she's a strong white woman who she's known for speaking the truth, and this is the only, maybe I can say this is the only white woman who has really talk about the truth about America, who has really come out and said the truth about America. You see the truth inside her eyes, and a lot of people really love her because of how she truly speaks what's really happening in this current world, especially in this Western countries. We've all seen how there is a lot of disrespect, how there is a lot of racist that's really going on in these Western countries. And then Elliot, she has really come out and opened the full truth, and this is the reason why he got a lot of people really like her, a lot of people really follow her, and we are really praying to God to continue blessing her to live long so that at least she can continue teaching these teachings to a lot of people outside there, because this is the only white woman, and you can all agree with me that she's the only white woman who she's truly knows what black people really go through, and the only white woman who she's truly speak up the truth. And I would really like to go and maybe support her and learn more about her, because she has got a lot of books. We need to purchase his books and we read so that we can know what's really happening in this current world. She really came out and said that racists were started by white people, and it's not that. And there is a lot of white people, not all white people, maybe I can say they are racist. Maybe 90% they are, but 10% they ain't. Not all white people they are racist. And even there are some white people who even dislike themselves for being white. They just want, or they just wish to be black people, because they carry that guilty of all the racist that these people have. They carry all the guilty of those other white people who do racist or who perform racist to other people. But there are some white people who are really good hearted, who a lot of people really love them, because they really know, they really understand that we are only one. It's only the skin color that's really separate us. They really know we are only one and we are made from God. So then she has still came out and say that racism really started from white people, because if you can do your own research, if you go to these Western countries, there are other countries you can be, they can welcome you in a good way, but other countries you will just see the some disrespect they have towards you. And I really wonder why us, maybe in African Caribbean, when these white people come to our countries, we really welcome them with our both hands, we really love them a lot. But my question is, do they see us as the way we see them? Do they welcome us the way they welcome our own black brothers the way we welcome them in our African countries or in our Caribbean countries? Because we really love to see white people coming to our countries, because at the end of the day we know they really come to support our country, maybe in tourist attraction, and that's the way maybe they will increase, or they will help in growing of our country, because we can get some amount of money from their visit. But we really welcome them a lot, we really love them a lot. In Africa, African people and Caribbean people really love black white peoples a lot. But at the other hand, these people others don't know how to appreciate, because when any black person from Africa or from Caribbean visit these Western countries, he really face a lot of racists, he really face a lot of depression, while he or she is in there in this Western country. So we just want to be equal, we just want to be one, because we are all made from one God. And we can see how a lot of maybe white people, they have really invested a lot in African countries and Caribbean. And my question is there any black person that can go maybe to these Western countries or to China to build a big hospital or to build an apartment so that these people can go and settle there? Is this possible? Because this racist has been, a lot of people, they have really talking about it for a very long period of time, because it's really affecting a lot of people. It's really making a lot of people to be depressed. It's really making a lot of people to be sick and tired of either living in this Western countries, because of how they are being taken, the way they are or the way they look. I see, if you're a black person and you have a degree maybe in hospital, if you go to some of these Western countries, they see you as just, you are just like a normal person. If you can go to apply a job with a white person and you're a black person, if you have a degree and that white person doesn't have, they will take him because they know maybe he has experience or really know what he really knows how he really know what to do. But a black person doesn't have that opportunity, doesn't have that priority or that first option to be taken, because I don't know, but I think these people, they just fear us, and this is the reason why we should unite together as one. As black people, African, Caribbean should unite together as one, because they say together you are stronger. But if you cannot unite, you'll be weaker. So I would really like all black people to unite together as one, so that at least we can be able to stand on our own. At least we can be able to conquer this world, because we just want to be equal. I have never seen any black person being a racist to a white person. No, I've never seen that. It's the other way around. I have never seen any white people come to black nation or to Caribbean or to Africa and he or she experience racist. I've never seen such a things. But a lot of black people, they are really talking about these things a lot. And then Elliot, may God continue blessing you for giving us this teaching, and may you live longer so that at least a lot of people can really learn from your teaching. So guys, if it was for the first time you're coming across my video, don't forget to like this video, subscribe and share. Thank you so much for your time. May God bless you whenever you are. One love.